The psychology behind procrastination. It doesn't announce itself. There's no alarm, no warning light, just a quiet delay that feels harmless until it isn't. And by the time you notice, something has already been decided for you. Procrastination is usually framed as a personal flaw, a lack of discipline, a failure of will. But that explanation is convenient because it keeps the focus small, individual, isolated. It ignores the larger machinery quietly shaping when we act and when we don't. Pause here. Ask a simple question. Why does procrastination feel rational in the moment and destructive only in retrospect? The answer isn't laziness. It's psychology under pressure. At its core, procrastination isn't about avoiding work. It's about avoiding discomfort. Not the task itself, but the emotions attached to it. Uncertainty, fear of evaluation, loss of control. The mind learns this pattern early. When effort leads to judgment, delay becomes protection. When outcomes feel uncontrollable, waiting feels safer than acting. Over time, the brain doesn't just tolerate this behavior, it automates it. And that's where things get interesting, because the brain is not designed to optimize long-term outcomes. It is designed to minimize immediate threat. Procrastination exploits that bias perfectly. The future is abstract, the present is loud. A deadline next month carries less emotional weight than a mild discomfort right now. So the mind makes a trade, quietly, efficiently, without asking permission. Immediate relief in exchange for future cost. And the cost compounds. What's rarely discussed is how predictable this becomes, not just in individuals, but in systems. Workplaces build timelines assuming delay. Platforms design environments that fragment attention. Entire economies run on the assumption that action can always happen later. Procrastination stops being a bug, it becomes infrastructure.
Think about that.
If attention is currency, then delay is debt. And debt benefits someone. The more overwhelmed a person feels, the less likely they are to act decisively. The more choices pile up, the easier it becomes to postpone all of them. This isn't accidental. The human brain struggles with open loops, unfinished tasks, unresolved questions, vague expectations. Each one drains cognitive energy. But instead of closing those loops, procrastination keeps them suspended. A constant, low-level tension. Enough to exhaust, not enough to provoke change. That state is remarkably controllable. Notice how often procrastination disguises itself as preparation. Researching, organizing, waiting for the right moment. It feels responsible. It feels intelligent. But it quietly shifts agency away from the present self and hands it to a future version that may never arrive. Here's the contradiction. Procrastination promises freedom. I'll do it when I'm ready. But the longer it persists, the narrower the available choices become. Deadlines close, options disappear, decisions get made by default. Not choosing becomes a choice, and the brain learns something dangerous, that avoidance works. Each delay reinforces the loop. Each escape from discomfort teaches the mind that relief comes from postponement, not resolution. Over time, this changes how risk is perceived. Action begins to feel heavier than inaction. Commitment feels threatening. Even small decisions carry outsized weight. The system isn't broken, it's adapting to uncertainty, to environments that reward reaction over intention. And once adapted, it resists reversal. That's why advice alone doesn't work. Just start, break it into steps, use willpower. Those suggestions assume the problem is effort. But effort isn't the obstacle, control is. Procrastination flourishes when people feel their actions won't meaningfully change outcomes, when feedback is delayed or opaque, when standards are unclear. In those conditions, waiting feels logical. Why act now if the consequences won't be felt until later, or won't be felt by you at all? This is where the discomfort deepens. Because procrastination isn't just a personal habit. It's a response to how power, accountability, and time are distributed. Who sets the deadlines? Who benefits from delay? Who absorbs the cost? These questions are rarely asked because asking them shifts responsibility upward, and upward is harder to reach. So the narrative stays internal: self-help, self-blame, self-optimization. Meanwhile, the underlying conditions remain unchanged, and the cycle continues. There's a final detail that often goes unnoticed. Procrastination doesn't erase motivation, it stockpiles it. The pressure builds quietly, stress accumulates, then action happens. Sudden, frantic, inefficient. This last-minute surge is mistaken for proof that procrastination works. But what's really happening is a system forcing urgency to compensate for avoidance. It's not productivity, it's containment. And containment has limits. Eventually, the margins disappear, there's no more time to borrow from. No future self left to hand things off to. Only consequences. So, here's the unresolved question. If procrastination isn't a failure of character, but a predictable response to how modern life is structured, then what would it mean to design environments, work, education, technology, that don't rely on delay to function? What would change if people were supported to act earlier with clarity, feedback, and real control? And what might be lost by those who benefit from things staying exactly as they are? Sit with that. If this reframes something you've always blamed on yourself, say so. If it challenged you, question it. Share what you've noticed in your own patterns or the systems around you. The conversation doesn't end here. It starts where assumptions stop.